Kalanyam도 너 인디 손으로지 아니 가라고 오만다고도 잔다고도 근데 간다죠 이나 뭐보지를 그 오마 바그때 지금은 나요 하유 전부 주는 거 무슨 가는 거셔라 들리지는 뭐보지를 gem바도 하고 들리고 손을 치고 열래라서 하고자
고마워요.
고마워서나 가라고
얘기 시간.
말에 당가서 가르려느라 지금 뭐뭐냐도 지금 다 잡아이나 뭐뭐 소소하더니도 소소하더니 가서 그게 하유 전부 자소요라 이노도 지금 말다고도 아니 오만다고도 잡아디노도 되게 팬도이나 다 기차도 시계 돈을 디칼서 아니 뉴뉴지면서 매나요 소마 갈때 때든 러셔라 되게 소마를 gem바도 던져봐비야가 소노사래라 뭐서
저 caso que se hizo en Chapaina.
momboyo sacando 맞아 mom보냐도 가와냐도 뭐 저라 어디 가서 수수가 되지 않는데 어떻게 지나 mom보질라 수수가 빼나 오마파그때 지금서 말이나요 이 오마파그때 지도 하용진으로나 하용도는 참 동라지금 토와이나 동라질라 주반비와도 gem바도가 그리고 소노사래라
So, for example, an example of accumulating merit is when you make food for a lot of people. So, such an example would be like doing pujas or certain ceremonies when people, when monks, for example, so they take one big pan and they put, even if it's just one packet of milk that they spill together with butter and other ingredients. So when they serve it to others, so it becomes like an action of merit and an action of generosity.
이니 지금 타콘도 다시 가이나 사자도 소마야 보잖아요. 소노쇼사르스 소마서 참아져 들리지나.
Yeah, and for example, if you clean a certain temple or a certain shrine, so it also becomes an action of merit.
아니 나가마 인도자도 맞아지 가서 더 파파 럽중 맞아야죠. 델라 참아 존조 접지네 아니 참아 존조 지금 아고 지고 고도 자주 돈을 다점에 공부 탈라라 참아 존조죠.
Yeah, so there is also another example from the life of the Buddha. So during the life of the Buddha, there was a certain disciple of the Buddha, which his name is Labchungpa. So Labchungpa, what he did basically is just to clean the yes, so just to clean the temple. So this is what he did, like just to clean the temple, and by the force of this merit of his activities, so he was able to reach the state of an arhat, the Dutch of the Kopan. A foe destroyer.
주가를라나 접고는 머신이 바바로 좀 봐서 루파주지 니 tomba게 저러 니 참아져 너 줄라고도 좀아서 참아져 칸이 가는데 저 더뽕 점아뽕 쓰니 하고 또 더뽕을 점아뽕도 템바지니 말이야 점아뽕을 더뽕도 템바지니 근데 샤이래라 이나고디 갈리리 틴더니 퍼서나 더뽕 점아뽕 내야라 바고지나 더뽕 점아뽕 돈다도 거래서 더뽕 점아뽕 본체 더마래 다는 녀모비다 사소가 지지 녀모 본거 같아 하고요. 그래서 때에 가서 참아 소소가 대상이 나요. 도마서 참아 버려는 들 드마고 들으시네. 도마서나 아니 동반이리 약고 알려도 손을 싸와도 소소가 네 대사가 거기서 도마 잡아도 소소지와 네 도보도 소지와 하나 자지기 지지버 차. 근데 열어. 열어. 근데
Te che si sono tanti Chapaina, te torni qua.
자소도 그래도라 아니 도마냐 도와도 배워 소노사와 아니게 거기 도마차와 아니 라죠와 도보질이나 고마 도마질이나 집에요라 엔틴도 그지 자지 지지 집에차 도마집을 디버 도마잖아.
Yeah, so the example of this person that is called Labchungpa. So at the time of the Buddha, he lived at the time of the Buddha, and basically he was he was not so smart at all. Like it was very, very hard for him, like to understand things or to apprehend things. So it was not easy for him, like to understand the difficult things, and therefore, like what the Buddha said is that all you do is just to sweep. Is just to clean with the broom like this room. So this is all what you do. And when you do it, so you say, I sweep the dust, I clean the stains. Like this is all what you need to say, these two sentences. And then Lab Trungpa started doing it. And when he started doing it, so it was, at first it was quite difficult for him because when he did it, so when he said like to clean or like to sweep the dust, so immediately he forgot like the other sentence, like to clean the stains. Like he always like got confused like with these two sentences, but then slowly he was able like to remember like these two sentences and not to forget so easily. And then eventually he also gained like the understanding of the meaning of these two sentences, and he understood that just that by saying like to sweep the dust, so it's not just mean literally to sweep the dust, but it also means to sweep the dust which represents the afflictions in one mind. So he understood that this is the meaning, and then slowly, he became an arhat. He achieved the state of a foe destroyer. So, um, therefore, like if one is only do like such a simple task, such as, for example, cleaning the dust or sweeping the room and so forth, so one can slowly gain an understanding of emptiness. One can also gain a lot of merit, to accumulate a lot of merit and good force, a positive force. One can be happy, and due to the cleaning of the room, so also other all the other people in the room will be happy.
다 가서 네 디가라 다 가서 가서 건강을 시우디 아 저도 가서 콘서트라 나나라 저레스 나나시아들라 가서 아니 로트라 농서도 상여레스 라 나즈비 로트라 상여레 롱원이 요비가 나즈비 로지 롱원이 메비 나즈비 로지 롱원이 요메 공기 개발도 마치기 나즈비 로지 상여레스 가서 되는 인지가 일로라 지금 동서 다 되어서라 대전은 저도 벌써 지지나 라야 태우스 마치 거세라 되면나 아니 저도 간디죠 나가 계좌로 지라
Pensé que era una idea ya te saltó menos.
서로 고메나 계좌로 지스 서로 줘나 no 계시
Okay, so yesterday we talked about the self, and like we talked about the emptiness, and specifically in the context of the emptiness, we talked about the self, and more specifically, we talked about the different way that the self appears. So we described that there are three ways that the self appears, right? So the first way is the mind which grasps at the self which is inherently existent, or sorry, like the first. So there are three types of mind that grasps at a certain appearance of the self. So the first type of mind is the mind that grasps at the appearance of a self which is inherently existent or existent from its own side. This is the first type of mind. The second type of mind is the mind that grasps at the appearance of a self which doesn't exist from its own side. And the third type of mind is the mind which grasps at the appearance which is not distinguished specifically in terms of appearing as something that existing from its own side or not existing from its own side, but grasps like at some kind of appearance of the self which is not distinguished specifically with any of these two first appearances. So if you have like some kind of question about the explanation that I gave about it, so please ask. Also, Andrew sent in English the translation of the text, so you can also see it. And if you don't have any questions, so don't ask.
근데 드링아 리바트 세우시라미도 가르드나 나가서 치면 다 동바다 치고를 잘하면서 저희 되게 진역들어 자샤도 자 이제 계좌에서 nhập 지어지래디나 그래서 공부만 쏟아지다.
Okay, so I want to I want to apologize because today we don't have water at Chile, so I didn't get like to wash my face. So I'm sorry because maybe the way that I'm talking is kind of a bit a boring one or not so interesting. So I want to apologize.
돈이 무친 주시면서 말아. 저 빠바도 말로 내 지도도 다는 집에 나왔어.
So yeah, now I also like need to kind of do like this with my eyes because they are very small.
small in.
Small I.
다 아니 가서
I'm joking.
단다 데라만 챙겨나 단다 송로치라다.
Yeah, so please, if there is someone that didn't understand, so please, you can ask me questions. Someone that didn't understand, like with regards to the explanation that I gave so far.
송게 민도 수마하고 나 옆보.
Yeah, so yeah, if there is no question, so it's very, very good because it means that you all understand good. Continuadus.
Would it be okay for the interpreter to ask a question for clarity? Yeah.
De interpreter. Conte cancelor. Te tondate congil. Cancelor. Tondate congillo selpo chaga gichetu keral nativa tang na tigre pesa.
So the first kind of mind is existence from our own side. What is the basic example of that?
What is the basic example of this mind?
Yeah. No, the first kind of mind.
The lo tampote the nate. You mean like I just want to clarify like your question. So you mean that the first type of mind is the mind that grasps at the I that exists from its own side, right? At the appearance of the I that exists from its own side, right? This is the question.
Grasp at the I?
Because this was like what was presented, right? So I just want to make sure that I understand. So you mean like that the first mind is the mind that grasps at the appearance of the I which exists from its own side, right?
Yes.
So you want to have an example of it. Ani lo tampote te nga rangun dupan zinpelote, right? Ani telatsen shi keran shi nang tugna sang song sang.
디 가르 띵거다 셰거라라. 나 롱은 접한 농게 있으면은 나서 디니 멘치 시야 소마팅 거 시야래라. 가자 소마팅 거 시야래라.
That's sang.
당가서 동반이 걸에 시시 나 롱은 접한 게 지어라. 디근 저설 때는 차서 시야요래서 요는 시야요. 이사 시야요.
Marlo.
다 질면 용 질면 차서 시야래서.
Yes, so actually, like with regards to when we talked about emptiness, so talking about emptiness, so the mind that grasps at the self which exists from its own side, which is the object of negation, which is what is to be refuted. So this is something that will be discussed a bit later, like in the same text that we are.
네, 가서 타기티 네 지금 다 쳐버지 아버지 로마트나 가서 나는게 나세를 저게들 나롱게 네 롤 소소를 노아노지 요바 레 삼바지레스 롤 노아노지 마치 롤 셔요라 롤 셔라노지 요바레 삼게지레스 다지그 롤 노아노지 요바 마레 삼게지레스 다지그 롤 노아도 뭐나 고이 지마나 기도네 나세지마도 딜 노아노지 요바에 삼마도 노아노지 메바에 삼마도 기도네 나세지 로상요레 딜 나 디가 노니 노아노지 요반스게들 다 같이 되는 습이 난서세요. 주기 난서 고사단세 데레스.
Yeah, so if you want to put it like maybe a bit more easily, like all these three types of mind, so maybe we can lay it like this. So there is the first type of mind which thinks that whatever appears, so it exists as it appears. So the self, as it appears to the mind, so it exists like this. So this is the first type of mind. The second type of mind is the mind that doesn't grasp the appearance, that doesn't think that things exist as they appear. That doesn't think that the self exists as it appears to the mind. So this is the second type of mind. And the third type of mind is just some sort of like a general mind which apprehends the self and that apprehends the self just in a general sense and doesn't kind of make a certain distinction like with regards to and doesn't make a certain distinction with regards to does the self exist as it appears or does the self exist like differently than it appears. Doesn't make like a certain distinction and just perceive the self in a general sense. So this is the third type of mind. And as for the first type of mind, so this is actually what is to be negated, the object of negation there grasps at the self.
다 가서 때인바 다 르르 다 동보도 르르 노 아니 노아노지 매반스 빌려서 니바테 르르 노아노지 요반스 빌려서 somebody 르르 노아도 노아 거의 기벌마지니 기도네가 셀로지리스 당간스 빌려도 소리서 디 노네 르르 노아노지 매반스 빌려도 오미타와 니케고 스톰바니 또 생기 고사마도 요마레스 디타나데 쇼토니 사소노데 도아 동보 오미타와 니비 고사마도 지지지라 문중세지 쇼론이 싸니? 비신 넘버라나. 비신 넘버 22.
Nicht das Sommer.
오, 싸서. 23.
Yeah,
싸서노.
so now we can also look at the text. So we are in page 23. You can look at the translation that Andrew sent if you want. Yeah. So before I'll quote the text, I'll just say like what Ken said, is that so we talked about like the three types of mind, right? So the order is a bit changed now. So the first type of mind is the mind that doesn't grasp the self, that doesn't think that the self exists as it appears. The second type of mind is the mind that thinks that the self exists as it appears. And the third type of mind is the mind which doesn't make any specific distinction between like whether the self exists as it appears or not, but just in general apprehend like the self in a general sense. So this is the third type of mind. So as for the first type of mind, which doesn't think that the self exists as it appears, so this is a type of mind that only the person that gained an understanding of emptiness, or only a person that give rise in his continuum to the view of the middle way consequentialist, view, the Madhyamika Prasangika, only such person can have such a cognition.
다 때린다. 다 니바테 만질 해지진서 예신이라도. 니바테 만질 해지. 당가서 가그와 문이들. 니바테. 동보도 당가서 요 말이지만 갈릴리. 그래서 연하 약실에 여러제 말. 특히 동보 굴러도 뛰고 싶어라. 다데데 니바테 만질 해지진서 예신이라도. 아니 삼바트 수지 탐을 비지지 간조지지 타니비 테마지라. 아니 저르스 다데르다. 동보데 만질 해지라. 네 기도는 가서 manzal hechi ziyada, manzal hechi ziyada chepa jirisi. Dila ngara ratundu. Manzal hechi lara la danzal kote shiri. Manzal hechi lara ko danzal mara, jito ni nganzal bilo siya. Dika tebis chepa jirisi. Dila raki chepa ndo. Nga yimban zimba, nga rongo ni yimban zimba siya, tindi chepa isara nga tindi chepa dika. Ko tindi chepa jirisi.
Karatan kepar.
Ngar zimba lo wato, nga zimba siya dila. Ngar zimba siya ngara jangar chawa ina, 아니 다트만 zambarelesi man zambalena kullu tonher namje ngati yoresi ta ngarla jogiter ngatinya laze ta ngaso tinyi gdal jogdo ngatinya rong ngoni yopatsa rong ngoni mo yempatsa tondir kokoya nishi yoresi mato namje ngaso nganza billo cheper machina ani nganza billo kana nganza billo kasona tini ngakasharo ide ngayo gore ngarme kores adrigi chepesh pena ngaso 덴버 트바로 덴버 트바라다 저거다 로모니 트바스니 저 되어 어떻게 시바레스 덴바 요레스 덴버 요 말해라.
Okay, so so then as for the first type of mind, so the mind that we talked about, that the mind that doesn't think that the self exists as it appears. So this is something that we don't have yet. Like we don't have yet this mind because, it is kind of a very advanced way of apprehending the reality. So this is something that we don't have yet. And the thing that is more relevant to us in terms of like what we have is the second type of mind, which is the mind that, the second is the way of grasping I that is innate self-grasping. This is like the second type of mind that grasp at the I, this innate self-grasping at the I. So this is the second type of mind that we have. And the third type of mind is the conventionally valid way that the normal person, that is someone who has not realized emptiness, posits the self. So not making any specific distinction with regards to like whether the self exists as it appears or whether the self doesn't exist as it appears, but just apprehends the self in a general sense. So this is like the third type of mind. So if we are talking more specifically about the second type of mind, so we said that this is the innate grasping. This is the way of the innate grasping at the I, and it's a bit like I think that it's a bit hard like to say it in English because it's something that is more like in Tibetan. But I think that maybe in English we can say, for example, let's say like this. So existent inhale. It's a bit it's a bit hard like to follow it in English, but so in Tibetan, those of you that know Tibetan, so there is like a difference between ngadzin and ngardzin. So the ngardzin, it has a latun. Latun like is kind of a particle that has like a certain effect on the sentence. So it will be a bit easy like to give it example like with another thing. So for example, when you say this is true or this is truly existent, there is like difference between these two. This is something that this true thing is exist or this is truly existent. There is difference like between these two. So yeah, it's a bit hard like to forward it in English. But when you say something that truly existent, so this is what is to be negated. But you don't negate that something is true, right? So therefore, like in the text, like it doesn't only say like ngadzin, it also say ngardzin, because basically what it means, if I don't like kind of get stuck on the grammar thing, it just means that you don't negate the I, because if you only say like ngadzin, so actually this is a type of a mind which is a mind which is not to be negated. This is a mind which is in accordance with reality, because this is a type of mind which apprehends a self, a conventional self that does exist. So this type of mind is not to be negated. But the second type of mind, which in Tibetan it's called ngardzin, so this type of mind actually it means that it apprehends the self as existent from its own side. So this is the certain like distinction that is being made in Tibetan. So otherwise, if you consider like the first type of mind to be an object of negation, so you'll negate also the self which is conventionally existent. Like you'll become non-existent like the self, and this is not what we try to do.
도망한데 너네 이게 너도 마한테서 로는 거 있어. 근데 저체도 니바들 있어. 아니 다 도모디노라 다음에 또 비시럽 진거 담은데 저기 단지 예로라. 데라 konzaki 단지도 주기 단지니 아니 말 데라 konzaki 단지도 주기 단지니 다음에 또 비시럽던 저도 뭔가 이해세시도. 데데 다가서 단지 세한테 가르래지나 다음에 또 비시럽던 거 담은데 저로선도. 거 담은데 저. गर्दामते छोसे या कर लारजना जतो दा मेपा तो पिलो तो दा योपन जमिलो नि बोतन गर्दा ताता इ गोरे संगवा ताता गर्दा लगे तेरे नि योना दा त ट्रबा इ गोरे योना दा त माटबा इ गोरारे दे दे दा त ट्रबा तो दा त माटबा नि मोगरे गर्दा योना दा त ट्रबा दा त ट्रबा माइना दा मेपारे से कुछ सिरा ओतिनो जि가 दे दे को니 मोगरे 자디 को니 जबिलो नि बोतन गर्दामते छोचाते गोरेस 다 단세대 다음에 또 싫어 그다음에 저희들이 단세대가 다음에 또 싫어 또 인자통 뭔가 따다 차 그래서 자동 뭔가를 하고자 그니까 열도 뭔가 차대 그래서
Yes, so now we are going to read a bit below, like the sentences in the text. So, yeah, now we are in page 24. So, just a second. Okay, So yeah, I'm starting to read. So self-grasping is directly contradictory to the wisdom realizing emptiness. The mode of apprehension of the wisdom realizing emptiness and the mode of apprehension of self-grasping, the self-grasping of the person and the self-grasping of phenomenon are mutually exclusive and directly contradictory. So when we say so when we say like that, that they are contradictory, that they are like usually contradictory. So what we mean? It means that they are contradictory. They are like the exact contradiction of each other. Like they contradict each other directly. So it means that if so the self can be only whether it's established from its own side or doesn't establish from its own side. So there are only these two options. So therefore, like they directly contradict each other. There cannot be a situation when these two types of mind or the two types of existence like kind of exist together. So therefore, like they become directly contradictory because there's only one option, whether the self exists from its own side or whether the self doesn't exist from its own side. So it can be only one of these two. So therefore, this is the meaning by saying that these two types of mind, the mind which grasps the self to be existent from its own side, and the wisdom that realizes that the self doesn't exist from its own side, they are their way of apprehending its object is directly contradicting each other. These two types of mind.
그래서 시사서 다 안에 단세 때라 니유레스 건사기 단세도 주지 단세 니유레스
So there are two types of grasping. There's two types of self-grasping. So is the self-grasping of, let's say, a being, the self-grasping at the being, and the self-grasping at phenomenon.
다 주지 단세 단 건사기 단세에 가르래라나 다 때라 아니 엄마 탄저와 그 샤서 지도 엄마 론제 바멘시 그 고사기 단세 주지 단세 삼라와레스 다 엄마 탄저와 지나 주지 단세 단 고사기 단세세가티 지도 단세 임바 지발라 고사라미나 인셈빌로 고사 덴버트반셈빌로티 고사기 단세 폼보 덴버트반셈빌로티 주지 단세 그러니까 무발을 접으시면서 넘바동 저도 집어지 줘레스
So there are two different ways of positing these two types of grasping. So we said that grasping at the self of the being and the grasping at the self of the phenomenon. There are two types of way to posit it. So the first type of way is that which is presented in the middle way consequentialist school, or we can say Madhyamika or Sangika. The second type of way is the way that is presented in all the other schools from above the Madhyamika or Sangika, which are the middle way autonomy schools and all the ones that are below in the Buddhist philosophical schools. So there are two types of way to posit these two self-grasping. So if we are talking in the context of the Madhyamika or Sangika or the middle way consequentialist school, so the way of positing these two types of grasping at the self, whether of person or whether of the phenomenon, is the following. So the type of grasping at the self of the being is a bit more accurate, I think, not person. The type of grasping at the self of the being is the perceiving the being to be truly existent, which is what is to be negated. And if we give an illustration about what is grasping at the self of the phenomena, it would be grasping that the aggregates of the being are truly existent. So therefore, in the middle way consequentialist school, the difference between the two types of grasping is merely in terms of the object, the focal object, and not in terms of like a certain apprehension, like a different apprehension of these two focal objects, but just the focal object is changing. But the negation is the same, like with regards to each of the objects. It's just that the object is being changed in the middle way consequentialist school.
다 아니 단세들라니 들어서
인한테 우마텔기가 맞도.
엄마로 접으시는 거지. 무슨 거 들으셨어요? 다더니 때라도 porque 저서 이게 보이시게 이게 못다. 아니 뒤에 동보 때라도 때라 건사기 단도 주지 단지니까 다음에 또 비시로 주동 거이런다. 그니 니가 다음에 또 비시로든 저동 거래 되어서 고사기 단서도 주기 단서 니 시에 되나 니까지 저동 고사 다음에 또 비시로든 저동 거다 차대요 레스 어디라다 다음에 또 비시동 저동 거 있어 저동 거 일어나 군이 여때 거 차대요 레스 어디
Yeah, so you can also see in the text. So it's written in English. It's written like this: the mode of apprehension of the wisdom realizing emptiness, and the mode of apprehension of the two self-graspings, the self-grasping of the person and the self-grasping of phenomenon, are mutually exclusive and directly contradictory. So therefore, like we can see, like these two types of apprehension, whether it's the self of the being or whether it's the self of the phenomena. So here in the text, I think that it says like the person. I think that maybe it will be a bit more apprehendable to say being, because it doesn't mean like necessarily like to a person, like a human being, but also like to any type of being, animals and so forth. So yes, so therefore, like the wisdom which realizes emptiness is directly contradictory with each of these types of mind, whether it's the mind that that apprehends like the self to be, that apprehends the being to be existent from its own side, or whether the mind that apprehends the phenomena to be existent from its own side.
다 아니 tilα 대용 동보롱기 제열라 라제메 파티몬 트니 진짜 말로 반전 바 예라다 니비롱기 제야 덴버 메짱 덴버 트로녀도 제비 진짜로 소화예 다고들 동보테 가자게 아니 다음에 파토비라 싫어더라 다음에 또 싫어더라 다음에 또 싫어티 랑기 무예 라제메 파트 메파인 바란 트니 아니 라제메 파토비 동반년도 빌로 진짜 말로 바지레스 니바 안에 롱원이 요반즈게 로트가 아니 롱원이 메발라 롱원이 요반즈니 최초로 차대레스 디니니까 고사 찍이잖아 디녀도 요마요 말레스 고사 롱원이 저반즈 빌로트 야식 좀들이 고사 랑제메 파타 다음에 또 비셔도 카 기사라 말레스 고사 다음에 또 비셔도 기우레 고사 랑지 요반즈 빌로트 기사라 말레스 그니로 고사 찍이잖아 냠도 디녀도 요마요 말레스
Yeah, so now we are going to read in the text, further to read in the text. So, furthermore, the conceived object of the first is recognized as not existing inherently. It is a correct apprehension. The conceived object of the second is untrue and is held to exist truly by the mind that apprehends it. Thus, it is an incorrect apprehension. Yeah, so,
드라마라
yeah, so then the first type of mind is the mind that apprehends its object to be that object which is actually, like in fact, it is not existent from its own side, so it apprehends it like this, and therefore it is a correct mind. This is a mind which is not mistaken with regards to its apprehended object. So this is the first type of mind. The second type of mind is the mind which apprehends its object, which in fact, in reality, it doesn't exist from its own side, but apprehends it to be existent from its own side, and therefore it becomes a mind which is incorrect, a mind which is wrong. So this is the second type of mind. And these two types of mind, as we said, they are mutually contradictory, and therefore, in the continuum of one person, these two types of mind cannot rise at the same time. It's either that the mind which apprehends the self to be a non-existent from its own side, it's in the mental continuum of the person, or that the mind which apprehends the self to be existent from its own side is in the mental continuum of the person. But otherwise, there is no such situation in which these two types of mind can exist at the same time in the mental continuum of the same person, because they are directly contradicting each other.
당가서 다케인디코 용군군이나 용구 고람체레오티 동보가자 당고송고 레제 직소서라 아 당고조서디 다 다노 고자치를 르르 농세텔라 나오 녀빌로 농세텔라 상여레제 상치사 아티 상치시기노니 니 고자로 르르롱게 르르라 노아타라 요반즈빌로티 르로시 단제레스 다롱게 르르라 노아타라 요반 메반즈빌로티 다음에 또 비시로 레제 단디자 별로서 다 디노니 단디근 러시 가르죠 다 롱기 르라 치도 노아 노지 또 요반즈 빌로 다 지금 제존 스니바지와 거사 아니 랑은이 여비 켜버지비 나오 님들로 어떻게 그러시다 다도 줘봐 간디 노래 단지 간디레스 어떻게 나셨다 마시 용레스 다기 고고 저한테 다루랴
Yeah, so now if we kind of summarize what we went until now in the text, so at first, we identify the object of negation, right? At first, like the first outline is identify the object of negation. And then in this outline, it was discussed more about the three types of how the self appears to the mind, right? So, and then among the three types, so we also discussed more a bit about the two types of mind. The mind that apprehends the self to be exist as it appears, and the mind that apprehends the self to be exist not the way that it appears. So there are the two types of mind, and the first type of mind is a wrong consciousness. The second type of mind is a mind which is in accordance with reality. So, and now a more broader explanation about the first type of mind and how kind of it apprehends its object. So it's going to come down in the scripture. So this is also with regards to your question that you asked.
가서 되는 니바 부기 좀 나타 다음에 또 봐라 직다 레키지 제일 선지 고비 간사 다음에 검베 토마르 검비 원드 지디 제테도 가서 되신다 에는 네가 놓 가르즈나 다음에 또 봐라 직다 레키지 제일 선지 고 어제야 되래 아니 가서 토마르 가서 가르 검고래는 다음에 들니 건사게 다음에도 주지 다음에 니여래서 다기 단서들 건사게 단서도 주지 단서 니셔서 건사게 단서 주지 단서 니여바 노지 다음에 받으래요 건사게 다음에 받도 주지 다음에 봐 니여래서 되게 노니 가서 토마 가르 검고래는 건사게 다음에도 검고래서 보자 단서들 주지 단서도 건사게 단서 니도 다들 주지 다도 건사게 단서 다 니여바 노지 다음에 받으래요 주지 다음에 받도 건사게 다음에 봐 니여래서 가서 검고 녀래제고 디지 노니 도모 가다 건고요래라나 도모 konsaga dame 건고요래스 어디지리 다 도모 konsaga dame 시오래 단지 그 남자한테 시우다.
Yeah, so there are two types of self, right? Like the self of a being and the self of phenomena. And accordingly, there are two minds that apprehends the self to be non-existent from its own side. So the mind which apprehends the self of the being to be non-existent from its own side, and the mind which apprehends the self of the phenomena not to be existent from its own side, or that apprehends that maybe it will be a bit more correct to say it like this: the mind which apprehends the selflessness of the being, and the mind which apprehends the selflessness of phenomena. I think it will be a bit more accurate to say it like this. So there are two types of mind, and this is actually what we need to take in practice, what we need to practice, these two types of mind that apprehends the selflessness, whether of the being or whether of the phenomena, and the mind which apprehends the selflessness of being. So it is what is to be practiced or to be meditated upon first. Like this is the first mind that is to be generated, like in terms of meditation. So now it's going to become a bit more broader explanation.
제시사래. 제시. 더니 당가서 되는 아니 남의 또발한 직달 해지지 제일스 정도로다. 직달 해지지 진도. 단 아니 직달 해지라지 되래 갈라지. 저도 단스래. 하고자. 대대 단스 연발라 랑기 지지. 랑라면 비 단스들. 대대 가서 남의 바가와라 랑이 남의 바가 고고가 그래서 자손용 말로서를 기셔라. 강을 등을 말로서를 요라. 이 너무 소소가 등을 매파서라. 소소가 등을 던지게 자 단지 매파서. 근데그 단지티 랑기 지지여비 단지들 직다라 미디다 하고 직다. 저도 직초라 다와라. 직초라 다와라 지들 그거 문바디 아니 가사로 와래. 고사 계지긴 지바 이미지세 지고 직다라. 소로를 봄봉가 연락도 소바 차대요라 디잖이 델람이 랑기 기기 봄보라니 아니 다도 잡아서 빌려들 직달로시 랑기 봄보라마다 랑라니 봄보라는 것이 이다더라 랑라니 나로 랑라니 아니 다도 잡아서 빌려들 직달로시 디에 가서 가고다 랑라니 다도 잡아서 비단서 가고래 디가 가서는 나타가 나가나 티고서더라 디에 가서 가면서 그 내가서
Ani ci sunt tempo lungo.
아
Ci sunt tegin sunt ci
디에 되는 동어지다 아니 고작 다음에 공부했어
tegin sunt te tempo lungo. Okay, so then so from among these two, so the first one that is to be generated or to be cultivated is the mind which apprehends, or the mind which realizes the selflessness of the being, right? So then we'll ask, like, what is the reason that the mind, this is like the mind that needs to be cultivated or generated first? So the reason is that all the problems, like, they come from our own kind of mental continuum, like all these types of afflictions that we have and disturbing emotion. This is something that is being generated in our mental continuum, like whether it's like anger, attachment, and so forth. All these things we have in our own mental continuum, and actually the mind which focuses on the self, which is dependent on the aggregates. So this is the mind which focuses in the self that is dependent on the aggregates and apprehended to be existent from its own side, or apprehended to be like truly established or whatever. So this is the mind which is called the view of the transitory collections. This is called the view of the transitory collection. This is the name of the specific type of mind which kind of grasps the self to be truly existent or existent from its own side. So if we give like a certain etymology for the view of the transitory collections, so the view of the transitory collection, the transitory means that the self which this mind focuses on, so it is something which is kind of degenerates from moment to moment. This is something which is degenerating and changing from moment to moment, like until it degenerates. So this is the first, so this is with regards to transitory. With regards to collection, it refers to the aggregates of the person. So the aggregates which based upon the self is being designated. So this is this type of mind, and all our different problems and all our different afflictions, they come from this type of mind which grasps at the self to be which grasps at the self to be like truly existent or existent from its own side, which is designated based on the aggregates.
Is it actually possible to have a mind that is not in relation to the five aggregates?
To have a mind that is not in relation to the five aggregates?
Because the five aggregates are always there, like we always have our body, we always have some kind of feelings coming up. So is it possible to have a mind that is not constantly engaging with these five aggregates?
Nga tsola tu tak tu suko yorba. Te kanashin nga tsola tu tak tu tsolo yorba. Ani tenre ina te nga tso gyula te kumpo nga pola majupe. Zinpeloshi kia sigir pesa.
공부가 많이 비노예. 다 되는면서 송샤다디 다게디 이되거든요. 예때 보이디에 되다. 다 건서 또 간에 상도서라. 아니 거사게 다음에 더 보고 대용 롱기 폼보 소 제제 콜라용 콜라.
Ale raso.
대용 롱기 폼보 나포 소 제제 콜라 라말리파 롱원이 요파티 집다 세지섬 만즈 세지지 예나노 제자다 만즈오레로 폼보 나토 소리오 마테바 제토 켈레요 마테바 던디가 나세야 들어나 아니 스톱기용 계지 어딘 전내래라들 이네 수정 나서고 지나 나 알로지테레로 폼보를 마테바 나 오늘 불러진 잡아지 요도세라 지다디 이 요요쇼를 나서 하고 싶어 바로 됐다나리가 선 폼보 나서 폼보가 하고서 폼보가려 마템바 다 롱이 지지 jelaya matemba, jito jelaya matemba, da je kongla yo ramalipa, koro kongoni yungeji. 어떤지 진짜 되고 돌아가서. 이래 가서 아버지 뭐지 좀 말아.
Den hat so der Zahn und der Sinn der
들어들어도 되고 그랬어. 비하고 싶어. 가는 니 가서 로베 산지 저거. 데라 다치바는 제라 라말이 버롱도 유바도 자요레서. 로베 산지 저거 다 단정 당고시 그래. 데라 다치바는 제라 라말이바 롱도 유바서. 이제 또 제 pom어서 고네 라말이바도 고네 마테바. 롱시 유기지. 어떤지 이렇게 되고 돌아가서. 이거로도 그게 주잖아. 거치도 맞잖아. 또 아니 용들이 공들이.
Yeah, so if you are going a bit down in the text, so did you all hear Rika's question? So her question was like whether it's possible for us to have type of mind which is not engaged with any types of the five aggregates, since we all the time we have like body, all the time we have feelings and so forth. So this was Rika's question. And if you are going a bit below in the text, so we can see the following. It's a bit difficult for me to find it in the text, so please be patient. Okay, I don't think that I can find it in the text, but I'll just try to translate it directly. So so the object of the innate self-grasping, is that I which exists from its own side without being dependent on any types of causes and conditions, such as the aggregates and so forth. So this is the object of the innate grasping at the I. So what does it mean? Basically, it means that this type of I which doesn't depend on the aggregates, this type of I which doesn't arise or depend on any types of any other type of causes and condition, and the type of I which doesn't depend on any other thing in order to be existent. So actually, this type of grasping we all have all the time. Like there is kind of I which doesn't have to be dependent on any other thing. So this is something that we all grasp at all the time. And also Buddha Palita, the great scholar Buddha Palita, so in his text, he said that
뭐서 여통 제라 말리바.
Yes, so this is also like what Buddha Palita, the great scholar Buddha Palita said, that the I is that doesn't depend on any other thing such as the aggregates or any other type of causes and conditions, just doesn't depend on any other thing and exists from its own side. So this is also being mentioned in Buddha Palita's text.
But do we believe that it exists? Just because we believe and act as if it would exist doesn't mean it actually does exist, no?
Kesi nato perna rangune yopa ngate, naso loena no late kanis labora te tagarai te zinpai te ton moyola tendre yope kiapa yomarpa. There is no such necessity that
나 주셔야죠.
this is like kind of a mistake that
다
we're doing.
나 비라바지는 지 있더라. 근데 나 저저가 같이 전에 쓰용으로 납작은 쓰거든. 그래서 그걸로 듣고 말아본 말어 그런 것도 말어 집에 용사 그 삼바지 요도매. 근데 나선 또 같이 식도 남아서 로바지 지나마도 나도 두 말에서 그 삼바지 레이도도 로바 고마라 말어 배자요 말어 납작은 또 말어 집은 또 삼바지 돌아다.
Yeah, so now I'm going to give like a certain example of it. So let's say that, so for example, all of you came from very, very different places, from far places, from foreign countries and so forth. You all came here to India, right? So now, when you came here, so I want to ask you, what type of mind did you have? So did you have like this type of mind which thinks, or like actually like I came here like by my own, like I didn't need any other help. I had my money, I bought a ticket for the flight, I went to the plane, and then I just like came to India. Like, did you have like this type of mind that like I'm independent, like I did these things like by myself, by the force of like my own abilities and so forth? Or that you think, oh, actually, like if I didn't have like friends like to help me, so it wasn't possible for me to arrive here, or it wasn't possible for me to do this journey. So I want to ask you, like, what type of thought did you have?
Tene pena ngaro 공부하지는 되어 있나. 나도 로바면 고스. 그거 ngaro 집어대는 안 듣고치. ngaro 롱고토. ngaro 언니 로제 탑. 이제 고요 고마 ngaro 집어대는 집셔도라. 디삼반 도움이다.
Yeah, and also, so for example, if you live alone, like in your apartment, so do you have this thing like, oh, I don't need anyone else, I can get along by my own, I'm independent, I can sustain myself like all by my own, it's like I can be happy by my own, like what type of thinking do you have?
너 정말로 딘도하다.
Yeah, so like everyone have like this type of thinking, right?
리갈이 여라.
Do you have this
나를
type of
그치.
thinking?
스쿨
Vika?
떠먹고.
Do you have this type of thinking which says like, oh, I can do everything by my own. I don't need to be dependent on anyone else.
디살레스나 고모네 nga로요. 릴레 나자니메 노네 nga로도 가와네 nga로 조시. 스쿨 또 고요 마라 nga로 집어. 이토르사 삼바도 줄이요 메나.
Yes. So do you have like this type of attitude of thinking, like saying like, oh, like I'm not sick. I can get along by my own. I can cook my own food. I can be independent. Like, do you have like this kind of thinking?
On some level,
자바
yes.
마셔야 돼. 그 자마시.
But I think often we don't think like this in a conscious level. I think it's more subconscious. I don't sit there and think like, oh, do I need anyone to take this flight or can I do it alone? I don't even ask this question. But on a more subtle level, I think it's always in the back of our mind while we don't consciously think like, oh, I don't need anyone.
Ta circa che la canzone nella sono tante io.
여르지.
Inaante cantos laborette. Sansala te dis poketa una te lab kakudo. Ta sansala nga samshintu nga la samlu tendeme. Nga samshintu nga
메나 거의 시글레 그랬어.
te shula ta leb yore te so canso te so te korla te canzone sanguimena ya ta
어데라. 디여레스 따로.
te yore.
따로 저러거든요. 섬주도 나가로 끝에 서서 지어 말이는 세븐에 올래 그랬지. 넘바 단절해지 간절해지세요. 되게 하고다. 나로 지죠 마로테서 쉽게 올래 그래. 요새 관계 말고 세치라서도 뭐 시기게 올래 그래. 되게 라파도 나가서 그 제너럴 때문에 봐. 롱캐터 반선 봐. 라파도 되래. 나서 계속 나서로 그래.
Rapate.
라파 스바라파. 나가서 롱완스 봐주라. 공유 때문에 그 롱완스 해야 돼. 된 스바라파 차대래서. 나서 하거라.
Yeah, so yeah, actually what you said it's right because this is not something that we have like this is not something that we have like kind of we think about it like this is not something that we think about like kind of in purpose. This is something that comes automatically. This type of mind, which things like, oh, I can get along by my own, I can sustain myself like all by myself, I'm independent and so forth. This is not something that in purpose like we generate this type of mind. And this is exactly what it means, the innate kind of the innate type of self-grasping. So this is what it means because it's innate, like this is something that we don't kind of do it on purpose or something like this. So this is actually what is called, if we talk in the terms of like subtleties and growth levels, so this is the growth level of grasping at the self. The self like that we are totally independent, like we are free, like we don't need to be dependent on anyone else. So this is the this is the growth level of grasping at the self. So I want also to ask you whether you have this type of mind, you have like this type of attitude or thinking.
So may I add? So Mansoor is saying that, I'm not sure if this relates, but my independence is from and through other people. So for example, I had teachers who taught me modified ways of cooking and transportation, but my independence is dependent on other people. So the more independent I am, the more I depend on interactions with other people. So my mind is always thinking about interactions and how I need people to help me to be independent. Sometimes.
אני מנסור לה, you know. Ani kongi te samsu kare sungsung serpene. Ta kongi santana la santana kare le biore salama. Ta con la rama iona perna con rango tontuka iona. Ani te shen la ragle giore. Ta gani sana kesi soso te kelsi con te soso te kala sotu paina. Ani te shengi tsane ani te kala sotan te jangne. Ani shine te kala sotangi rangwa nanshi te konto pare. Te kanashi te perna lamka ladro ani te chicholankor ladro ani te jotante yan te shengi tsane con te jangne ani chetsan te con la rangwante to pare ser sumsong. Te samsama te con la te samsul te ore te ngala rangwan chitsam yona te tsam te shena ragle gores.
그래 거기나 뭐가 마토 나의 마코티 가서 지바라니 스스로 통말에 땅가 연지면 지진질 때나 마토 동보지 연지면 지 용진을 때니 용로요 공부 보이지 용 칼라서인지 용 근데 진진질 때나 마토 나런 거 못해도 삼바도 걸 롱식이 요래서 그래서 그 마테나 너도 말아 뛰어래 나솔라 스스로 무여를 강한 너도 저래 나전에 또고 말에 사 삼바들 레드레스 이게 나전에 또 먹고 삼바로한테 rapate ngasola kaptu yoteres kola tez chungre garazina ropachi matena ko doto jema lito jema kola tez chungres di anin zama rapate ngasola shi chimbe yor pena ngalo jina ngara ko che ngara tez sa kichik samba jin lema moni jina zawani te ngara ropachi lo mate jipata ji lo mate jipata so zawani ni to yo mares
Roboshana matempa te tsawani
ji lo matena ngaso tagaza sekolah tu mugo ke dari rucaji zaman ini tu malas masoleda. Kalau tu kesama tu cumre, karena aku jodoh cuma ada mugo tunggu cuma ada di kaptul tu ada gora. Ini ngambil ropa cuma nang ronggo tu malas sah samba tu kalau si cuma yores.
Yeah, so for example, as for Mansoor, so since since he cannot like walk alone or that he cannot see, and so he has like this type of mind which thinks like, oh, I can be independent, I can like do things by my own, I can sustain myself by my own. So it has like this type of mind or attitude in a very, very less intense, much less intense like than how in comparison like to other people. Because Mansoor knows that in order like if he wants like to work or like to make food and so forth, so he knows like that he needs like the help of others, and therefore like this type of mind which thinks like, oh, I'm totally independent, I don't need to be dependent on anyone else, I'm totally free. So like like this type of mind is naturally is not very intense, like this type of grasping at the self or at the independent self. So naturally it's something which is not so intense. But for us, so since we have like we can see, we can hear and so forth, so since we have like all this type of abilities, so naturally like we have like this sense of, oh, I can get along by my own, I can be totally independent, like I don't need to depend on anyone else in order to study this or that. Like this is something that we all have like very, very intensively, this type of grasping at the self or the self that exists from its own side. And also I have it all the time, like I think like, oh, like I can do it by my own and so forth. And actually like in reality there's no way at all that we can survive or that we can live without being dependent on anyone else or like on any other friend. Like there is no such type of existence in reality.
나들이 디센 손소 네 고다 저한테 지역 디세라마서 이게 손이랑 가서 나네 걸로 농세도 대롱원이 농세도 지금 반세 때 고무고 걸어 가서 정말 아니 저한테 지역 돌리지 있어 손이 좀 돼서 자니라 아니 저한테 지역 들이 저한테 지역 디세라마서 보다
Yeah, so I want to say so.
나를 빨리 사베미도 동발을 시작하면서 보잉에 받쳤지. 그러니까
So yeah, I want to say sorry because now we need to finish. Like we ran out of time. So I want to say sorry because we didn't get to do a lot of Q&A, question and answers. But what we are going to do tomorrow is not going through the text. We are going kind of to wrap out like everything that we discussed about, like the three types of how the self appears, and also like the self that appears to be existent from its own side. And yeah, we are going to discuss about all of that together tomorrow, and it's going to be like mainly a question and answers. And also I want to say sorry because today I'm not so sharp, like I didn't get to wash my face, and yeah, so yeah, I want to say sorry for that.
그 저거만 저 야버려다. 나 저거 그 찍고 있어. 다시 내려 정하나니 선이 연전 다던 저요. 봐.
Yeah, so
근데 가서 돌려 야버지.
so Tashidele, everyone. So we are going to meet tomorrow. We are going to have discussion tomorrow.
오케이. 바이바이. 세셔.